I'm now going to move on to the 10-minute rule motion on Marsha de Cordova.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill giving local authorities power to enforce against antisocial and hazardous pavement parking and associated powers to enforce against obstructive parking of rental micro-mobility devices, including e-scooters and e-bikes. Across much of the country, cars blocking pavements are one of the most common problems faced by pedestrians. Pavement parking can be especially dangerous for wheelchair users, those using mobility devices, people with pushchairs and young children, and for people with sight loss, like myself, who can be forced into the road with traffic they cannot see. Madam Deputy Speaker, Helen, a guide dog owner, described the impact of pavement parking when she came to Parliament to speak on the issue at the end of last year. She said, "My life hinges on my ability to trust in the safety of my surroundings, but when pavement parking obstructs the path, it robs me of my independence, confidence, and my trust in the world around me. Each time my trusted path is blocked, I lose a little more of my autonomy." Helen is not alone. Research from the charity Guide Dogs found that 4 out of 5 blind and partially sighted people said that pavement parking makes it difficult to walk on pavement at least once a week. And almost 95% of people living with sight loss have been forced to walk in the road due to vehicles parked on pavements. This number rose to 99% for wheelchair or mobility scooter users. As well as causing an obstruction, cars parked on pavements damage the surface, creating trip hazards, where 1 in 5 people with sight loss said they have been injured as a result of this. Madam Deputy Speaker, it doesn't have to be this way. In London, a law has been in place prohibiting pavement parking since 1974. Progress has also been made in Scotland, where the Transport Scotland Act of 2019 enabled local councils to enforce against pavement parking. So while progress has been made in some parts of the country, in many others, pavement parking continues. Now, my constituent Kimberly spoke of the contrast when travelling outside of London, and she said, "I don't encounter much pavement parking in London, but when I visit family elsewhere, it is a different story. People park everywhere and don't leave much space for me, my guide dog, and my son to pass. It means we have to step out in busy roads. I have to concentrate to make sure none of us get run over." While we should commend progress made on pavement parking in London, increasingly we are seeing abandoned rental e-scooters and e-bikes obstructing pavements.
Shameful.
This remains a problem in my Battersea constituency. Madam Deputy Speaker, the bill would increase the power of local authorities to introduce penalties for operators and riders of e-bikes and e-scooters left on pavements.
Good.
This bill would replicate the existing offence by the heavy goods vehicles of parking on pavements or curbs and extend them to all motor vehicles. And civil enforcement officers could actually enforce this.
Good.
While it has been a specific offence to drive on pavements outside of London and Scotland, it is not a specific offence to park on pavements in most circumstances, and this is reflected in the Highway Code, which in Rule 244 states you must not park partially or wholly on the pavement in London and should not do so elsewhere unless signs permit it. Civil traffic enforcement is possible in some limited cases, such as parking over dropped curbs and adjacent to double yellow lines, but in most cases, local traffic warden they don't actually have powers to act. Councils can also use traffic regulation orders or TROs, as well as installing physical barriers to prevent pavement parking. But TROs are not designed to be used to cover wide areas and require considerable signage and street markings, making their widespread use expensive. Now, in some cases, cars blocking pavements can be considered an obstruction under the Highway Act of 1980. However, as this is a criminal offence, it can only be enforced by police. Between the lack of a clear definition of what constitutes an obstruction and the lack of police resources, relying on police enforcement has not proven effective. There is a clear need for a law that brings the rest of England in line with London and Scotland. Councils need to be empowered to take action as they know their areas best. This bill would give them the flexibility to create limited exemptions in response to consultation with their local areas and communities. A change in the law has widespread support, including over 65% of the public and 74% of councillors in England. Sustrans, Guide Dogs, Living Streets, Transport for All, the RNIB and the Thomas Pocklington Trust all support a new law. And this morning I was delighted to meet and join a group of campaigners supporting an open letter to party leaders signed by almost 20,000 people supporting a change in the law. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is not a new debate. Indeed, the measures introduced in London in 1974 were originally intended to apply to the rest of the country. In 2020, the then Conservative government consulted on tackling pavement parking. That consultation considered a range of options. However, today marks 1,530 days since the consultation closed. Indeed, on the 8th of February last year, I called on the then government to get on and publish its response. So I welcome the Minister for the Future of Roads' commitment that this government is looking at all options and will come forward with a response to the consultation in due course. And I look forward to working with her on that. I understand the Minister is due to meet some of the charities and groups campaigning on this issue, and I know they hope to speak to her before any final decisions are made. Equally, I welcome the references to pavement parking in the White Paper on the English Devolution Bill and the consideration around licensing for micromobility devices. However, there needs to be an explicit commitment and clear timetable to addressing these problems. The government is rightly committed to record investment in infrastructure and transport projects, but it is important we get the fundamentals right and make sure that our streets are safe for everyone. Pavement parking prevents many people from living their lives, from working, from socialising, from taking their children to school or getting to that vital appointment, and that has to change. We have clear evidence that laws like this can and do work, and I urge the House to support this bill. Thank you.
The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of their opinions say aye, aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in this bill?
Kate Osamore, Steve Darling, Jim Shannon, Daniel Francis, Shoka Adam, Martin Vickers, Dr. Scott Arthur, Jen Craft, Florence Eshalomi, Rosie Deffield, Dr. Rosanna Allen Khan, and myself, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Marsha de Cordova. Beautifully done.
Thank you. Pavement parking bill.
Second reading what day?
16th of May.
16th of May 2025, correct? Wonderful, thank you.